So my name is Zaneski, and I'm a developer evangelist at an outfit known as Twilio. Super happy to be here. I love this meetup. Thanks for having me. So what we're going to talk about today in our quick lightning talk is the tooling around writing ES6 code. ECMAScript 2015 is the official standardization. So when you hear people talk about ECMAScript 2015 and ES6, they're talking about the same thing. We pretty much use them interchangeably. So does anyone here have any experience with writing ES6 code, messing around with it? Cool. For those of you that don't, you should totally carve some time out at some point. It is a ton of fun, and it will change your life when you're writing JavaScript. So quick look. These are the tech frameworks and build tools that we're going to be using. Babel is probably the most important one up here. This is what we're going to use to transpile our ES6 code into ES5 code, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Webpack is pretty much comparable to Browserify. It's not really a replacement. It's kind of similar. It does your modular loading. It can handle some of your build tasks, but it doesn't fully replace something like Gulp. And JSPM is another alternative. It's more of an out-of-the-box solution, so that's why I put it up here. So if you're getting started, you might throw this up there, and you'll see how quick and easy it is to get set up. So Transwatler, right? So when we're talking about transpilers, it can be a really confusing thing. It pretty much means it's a subset of a compiler, right? So what a compiler does is it takes your code and it compiles it down to something else. When we talk about a transpiler, it's a subset of that. So it actually takes your code and translates it into something very similar. So in this case, we're going from JavaScript to still JavaScript. The most popular one out there is the one I had on the other page, which is called Babel. It's community run. It's got like 5,000 something commits, like a ton of contributors. Tracor was another one. It came first. You might have heard it before. It was done by Google. It didn't really get all the traction in the world because it wasn't community owned. So obviously they're kind of slow with the pull requests. Babel is also previously known as 6to5. So if any of you have used that before. So we're just going to dive right into some code. So has anyone used Babel of the people who? Okay, awesome. So this will be a pretty similar review for you. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to write out a quick ES6 little app here. And I'm not going to go too much into detail in the ES6 stuff, but we have native classes now, so whoop whoop. So we're just going to create this class, and we're going to create a method on here that's just called like say hi. And this is just going to print out hi. And we're going to close this up. So now down here, we're going to create a new hello, and we're going to call say hi on it. Right? So definitely not confusing, very simple code. But if we try to run it with the standard node, we'll see it's throwing all these pissed off errors at us. Like, what the hell are you doing to me? I don't know how to speak this. But thankfully, we have Babel, which Babel will take it, like I said, and transpile it into runnable code. So it's really simple to use. You install it with npm, so npm install Babel, and it just drops it in. So you give it the file name you want to compile, and it just spits it out on the screen. So like, let's put it into a Vim buffer for right now. And you see, it's kind of like a mess. There's just a bunch of like wrapper functions and other things around here. But this is the code that will actually run in our current node implementation. So let's write that out to a file. So we'll just put that into out.js. And now we can give that a run, and we'll see it's going to print out hi, right? So that's super simple. There's not much to that. Babel's very limited in its command line utilities. We have to use a build tool like Webpack or Gulp or something, or Browserify and all these other things with it. You can't do modular. We can't require anything in this. So we're going to build out a quick Webpack introduction, and then we'll talk about the JSPM. So we're going to create a new file just so we can see how we do some importing. All right, so here we're just going to import hello from hello.js. Right, and this is the new ES6 importing. It kind of looks like reverse Python a little bit. And over here, we're going to export this as a default class. So it just lets us export it out, and it will be assigned into that hello declaration there. And we're just going to move this over. So now we actually have a two-file build system, right? So when we go to do Babel on it alone, it won't work because Babel won't do both files. So what we need is a module loader. So that's where Webpack's going to come in. So you install it just like Babel, npm install Webpack. And you also need to install the Babel loader. And the Babel loader is, Webpack has a concept of a loader, and it's basically like you would use with Gulp. It's just like a build task. So you pipe files through it, and it spits out an output. So we're going to Webpack. We're going to tell it to do a modulo bind, and we're going to say for any file that's a JS file, we're going to use the Babel loader on it. And we're going to start out with our app, because that's our entry point, and our exit point is just going to be out.js. Right, so this will go through, it'll build that, it's created here, and we can run out again, and we get the same thing, right? But that's tiresome. We don't want to have to do this every time we make a change to our file, right? So Babel Webpack lets us do a nice simple config, and then it can watch it. So just like you would with browser file or Gulp, you can watch your files, and it updates on changes. So we'll create our Webpack config JS. And what I really like about this is just a standard JavaScript file. So in here, we can actually do whatever we would want with any kind of other config file. Webpack's considered to be very opinionated, right? It gives you a lot of stuff out of the box by default, but it makes a lot of decisions for you. So just like before, we create our entry point, and then we need to create our output. And here, we're going to say the path is going to be the current directory. And the file name is going to be out.js, just like before. And then this part can kind of be confusing when you're approaching it for the first time. I know how to Google around. A lot of the examples just show you using the loaders in here, but you actually have to nest it inside of this module key here. And that's because they're just considered to be module loaders. So you'll see. All right, so loaders is just going to be this array. And this is the really powerful part, is you can map out what extensions with the regex that your loaders look for, right? So we can tell it to test for, we're going to check files ending in .js. It's going to use the loader of Babel. And we want to exclude our node modulars folder because it can slow things down and mess it up. So if I didn't typo anything, we should be able to run a little Webpack. Oop, we don't have to give it the name either, right? So it's built our thing, and then we can go on and throw a watch on it. And that's cool. So now it's actually watching our files. And just like before, we can go in and edit our app file, and we're going to say hello twice. And if you look on the left side, it's going to update and build it, right? So this is really cool. You have this running in your, in your terminal when you're working, and every time you save a file, it, updates the bundle. There's really cool plugins for it if you're a React developer. They call it like hot swapping. So you can actually do hot swapping live in the browser. So your React components and your React modules can get live loaded into the browser without any kind of updates or refreshes. And it works through proxies, which is an ES6 feature. So that's really cool. So my slides, super hipster, they are React slides. But I just want to show you that we can go down to this codes part here, and you can see my background. And I'm just going to change this to hipster swag or something, right? And as soon as we save it, the background, it updated. So this is really cool when you're working with React, when you're working with any kind of ES6. Nothing fancy, nothing new, but it didn't force any kind of reload on the page, and that's the cool part. So your React components will just update real quick. The next thing is JSPM, which is a very out-of-the-box solution. It's definitely not as configurable. It's not as powerful, in my opinion. But it works very simple. So you npm install JSPM, you can do it globally, and then you run through with an JSPM init. And JSPM stands for JavaScript Package Manager. It kind of wraps npm, because we need another package manager. But this one, lets you, you can look at like the package.json, and it just embeds itself in the package.json, right? So it's not actually like giving you a full-blown config file. It's just making use of what we already have. So after you initialize it, it downloads Babel, downloads a bunch of stuff. It asks you, if you want to make any kind of file name decisions. But it spits out this JSPM packages folder and this config.js folder and file. And this just contains like a bunch of system defaults, and it handles source mapping. So when you get an error bubble up in the browser, it'll actually show you your ES6 code thanks to source mapping. So that's pretty sweet. And setting it up, it's made to work directly in the browser as opposed to on the command line. So you have your index file. You include this boilerplate. So you import this JSPM system.js. System.js is this proposal for a module loader for the browser. So it actually handles all this asynchronous loading. It's actually pretty cool. It makes a lot of decisions for you. And then we're just telling it to load up the entry point. So I'm telling it to system load app.main. And I don't have to show you exactly how it's going to work, but you can assume that we create this app, we create this main.js, and right now you have to tell it to use strict, I don't know, like let a equal hi, console.log a, right? And then we can start up a server for that guy, and I did something wrong, right? But it's supposed to spit out hi. And this handles, compiling on the fly, saving it. It doesn't actually refresh the browser. I'm sure you can work that in with something else. But it's a real out-of-the-box solution, which is really nice. And if you're getting started with React, there's a great video out there by the guy who made it. I think it's called like the JavaScript of 2015. So give it a watch. You'll learn a ton. You'll go through building your first React app. Yeah, and that's about it. If any of this is new to you, if you're feeling overwhelmed, these tools change every month. So every month there's a new hot tool, right? We all know this. There's some new best JavaScript practice. Webpack's been around since 2014, so it's not like super new. But yeah, it can be challenging to keep up, but these are pretty well-established tools that everyone's been using. So cool. Anyone have any questions? Yes. Yeah, so you can throw the Harmony flag on it. It's always challenging to look at that big table that shows what supports what. Most people just use the transpiler to get by everything, but definitely, like if you throw the Harmony flag, some of them will work, and they'll probably be more performant because it's written in C code. But yeah, cool. Any other questions?
What's your favorite use of the end?
Sorry?
What's your favorite use of the end?
Favorite use of? Oh, the package manager. So JSPM is what I point people at to get started with React. It gets you spun up without knowing Babel, without knowing any kind of loading. It's just real simple. So I recommend that. On the things that I work on, I've been using Webpack. It's pretty cool. Especially if you're working heavy with React, you can require files like CSS files and images into your React components in your JavaScript code. And it makes the decision, if they're over a certain size, it'll base64 encode it and like inline it. So it does a lot of cool stuff for you. It's, like I said, it's really opinionated, but it makes working with like React really fun. So, cool. Time for one more, anyone? Okay, well, cool. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll be here all night if you have any questions. Thanks for having me. Cheers.